Hello again. The weeks have flown by since dual code rugby star Jonathan Davies came up with the idea of talking to the great and the good about all manner of sporting issues. He asked me to join in, and under the banner of Jiffy and Stubbsy, and with great support from leading insurance brokers Kerry London, we set about releasing a series of podcasts. We're going to listen back to some of what was said and be joined by the likes of Piers Morgan, Test cricketer Simon Jones, Bobby George from darts, and from football, Carlton Palmer. First up, in international rugby union, it was in the 1980s that England emerged to challenge the Southern Hemisphere countries, and it was under the leadership of Will Carling. Will was 22 when he was appointed captain. 5 Nations Grand Slam successes followed, and a place in a Rugby Union World Cup final. And when he joined us to talk about yesterday, today and tomorrow in regard to rugby union, what was first discussed was how Will and Jiffy first met.
But the one thing, when you play Twickenham, I didn't have much time to worry about Will because I had the English back row trying to kill me all afternoon, so I didn't really worry about the backs. But
you were taunting them.
Well, that's the way. It's like a bull. It's like a matador with a bull. The trouble is, if the bull catches you, you're dead, right? So that's the way I try to play. But the first time, I think when I really met Will was we played this together in Glasgow, didn't we?
Yes.
And then he was a really young lad. I don't think had he been captain or just been captain?
No.
I'm not sure.
No.
So we turned up like playing. Not in those days. We rocked up a couple of days before, one training session for the Barbarians, and then Friday night we played. We played Glasgow Academicals on a Saturday, like a charity or a memorial game or something. So then we went out Friday night. We had an absolute skinful, and we missed Will out with a missed one pass most of the first half. So then, he kind of regained his senses, and he had a good game then. But no, we've always had.
And Stubbsy, what he fails to tell you, right? What he fails to tell you is he had been on his, boot money from being in the valleys, right?
Shut up.
And then the poor student turns up from Durham, right? And is blown away because Jonathan Dave's there and there's a few others. Gets left with the bar bill, doesn't he? Gets left with the bar bill while they're sort of just giggling in the back. It's just like student. It took me another 3 years to pay that off.
If I bring the receipt, if you show me the receipt, then I've given you half.
Who's got the vision for where rugby should go in the next 5 years? This is bizarrely given them an opportunity to really think about it. What's best for rugby? It'd be a real shame if nothing comes out of it.
I think we were during when the game went professional. The Southern Hemisphere just went out. There you are, clean sheet, and they structured their season. And they went to kind of regions, didn't they, where they had towns before. And that was great for them because they've kind of structured where the emphasis then builds to play in the international match. And that was always going to be difficult for the Northern Hemisphere because of the different countries, the different competitions. And I think with this, pandemic now, I think it illustrates how important the Six Nations is. And maybe, if they can ring fence the Six Nations and then just say, right, that's the cash cow for the Northern Hemisphere, then surely they can do, if they want this world kind of championship to go in November, because not the November, the autumn test hasn't got the same kind of intensity and appeal to the supporters will as the Six Nations, as they. So maybe they can build around that, but it's always going to be difficult then for the club scene to change structurally in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, you see, what I would love to see, which is almost like would seem to be going backwards, is instead of having 3-4 teams come up, you get Australia come up, and one year they tour England. They play 3 tests and they play midweek games against the club sides.
Yeah.
And, and then next year they tour Wales, right? And they play, the regions. And so Wales, England, Scotland only ever see these teams, say, every 4 years or whatever. It makes it different. It's a 3-test series. There's some, so hence, there's some value in it. There's some interest in it. It's not just a one-off game, and you have a series of games. They play these midweek games so that down at Exeter, as a you get in the top 4 of the Premiership. You get one of these midweek games. You imagine Australia or the All Blacks down in Exeter. How great would that be?
Will, you mentioned your Rob Andrew before.
Yeah.
I was looking this afternoon, just looking back at the the drop goal in the quarter-final against Australia, I think that was. Can you just talk me through how drop goal moments like that come about, whether you decide, because I think you won a line out, you drove forward, then eventually got it back. So was that decided before? I love moments like that because they're late in the game and the pressure on Jiffy. We'll come to your 2 drop goals in a minute late in the game, don't worry. The pressure on whoever's going to do that, it's intense.
Yeah, well, if I remember, we won a penalty. We were just outside of 22 and we won a penalty. And it was great because we were just trying to work out what we were doing. And there was a guy, Dowie Morris, used to play, who was the most excitable guy I've ever come across. And we used to call him the monkey. And he was just like, and the monkey was jabbering on about, I can't remember what, and eventually you had to go, Dowie, shut up, just shut up, right? And Rob and I trying to work out. We went, we'll go down the line, and then Dino was like, we'll drive it, and Dino and I was saying, so Rob, put it up just outside the 22, because we were going for penalties, right? So that was the plan. Was we'd drive the line as far as we could, then we'll put it up, and we'd try and keep them under real pressure, get a penalty.
Two-handed catch. They get the drive going. First bit's done. And Australia now won't dare to come in from the side and bring that down. Back to Rob Andrew. Well, he struck it. It's over! Unbelievable! Rob Andrew!
Dino's driving. Dowie's very excited, and then Dino would either drop the ball or something happened. Something went badly wrong for the English forwards to actually give it to the backs. And Rob, just before it comes, said, "I'm going to go for a drop goal." And God, I promise you this. And I went, "Don't be stupid." I said, "Put it up." And he went, "I'm going for a drop goal." And I do remember, as Dowie passed him, thinking, "Be obedient. He's a very good Cambridge boy." He was usually, And I saw at the corner of my eyes, I went to chase it, that he'd gone for this drop goal. And I remember thinking, and then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, fine. And he had run back and he was standing under the post with that look of absolute, and he was just looking at me. And I was like, okay, yeah, it's okay. It was okay. But it was a hell of a drop goal. It was from miles out, but he never, because in trade, he had been practicing them a few days before and he'd been absolutely shite.
Test cricketer Simon Jones was part of a fearsome England bowling attack. Hoggard, Harmison, Flintoff, Jones were dangerous. Simon was awarded the great honour of Wisden Cricketer of the Year. And when he joined us, of course, we discussed England's 2005 Ashes series success. Does somebody talk to you about the 05 Ashes series every day of your life? Is it every day of your life that people ask you about it?
I wouldn't say it's every day, but I quite like Twitter. And you'll always get that ball I bowled to Michael Clark coming up.
That is very good. The swing works, the Oracle again. Quite brilliant from Simon Jones.
Always. Yeah, it's nice to remember it. I can't believe it's 15 years ago. Now time goes so quickly. But yeah, to see it again is nice. I'm not scrolling through YouTube every night watching it.
No.
But yeah,
it's gonna be sad then, Sam, to be honest.
Yeah. might need some help.
You went to visit the surgeon of the stars, didn't you? Go to Colorado and Dr. Steadman you. But you're in great company there. He was looking after the real elite stars of sport, wasn't he?
I went over there because with my left knee, which I injured in 2006 in India, I tore the cartilage off the bone. There was like a 2 centimetre hole, circle. And he'd invented what was called a microfracture. So they drill the bone to make it bleed because the cartilage is not there. And then it fills in like a scab. So when you scuff your elbow or something like that, you get a scab. That does the same thing with the cartilage. So he tries to replace the cartilage. And he'd invented this microfracture. And look, I'm going out to Colorado, I don't know what to expect. And I've gone in to see this guy, big guy. I'm 6'3.5", something like that. He was a bit bigger than me. And he had a cowboy hat on. And I thought, that's not a good sign. The one thing I noticed, though, around his room, right, which is a big office, from floor to ceiling, there was just signed pictures of athletes he brought back, whether it be American football, baseball, rugby, football, whatever it was. But there were 4 or 5 deep. He just didn't have enough room for them. And I thought, well, yeah, that'll do me. And then he's done the operation, and I've slowly come back. The thing about the microfractures is it takes 1.5 years, 2 years to harden up before you can do anything. So the rehab is horrendous because you're taking 1 step forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 1 step back all the time. Because if you get any swelling, you've got to stop. Because then that shows there's something wrong. And he was, that was probably the toughest rehab I ever did. I played on for another 7 years. 7 years. And it consumed me in the end. It was horrible. When I was at Hampshire, it was just a vessel. I was just waking up every morning thinking, right, I've got to check for swelling. Woke up on, Christmas Day thinking, will the gym be open? I don't need to go to the gym. Boxing Day, I was driving to the gym to see if it was open. It consumed me, Jeff, and it was horrendous.
You took a 6 for 53. Was that I think that was the third test, was it? Was that the third test? I think it was.
Yes, that was at Old Trafford. Yeah. Do you know what? It was nice, obviously, to get 6 for 53. But do you know, as the series progressed, there was a massive amount of pressurized situation on us anyway, because I think it was the first time the public had seen that we had a chance of beating them.
Yeah.
It was on terrestrial TV, so everyone could watch it. Not saying that Sky and that don't do a good job now, because they do, but it was on terrestrial TV. Every single person could watch it. But the biggest thing for me was on that 4th or 5th day, they turned away 20,000 people from the ground. When we warm up normally, you probably get the odd person who's there to collect autographs early and stuff like that. The ground was full. There was capacity. And the boys couldn't believe it. We'd never experienced anything like this in our lives. And that just summed up the series, I think, boys. It was just because we'd obviously won back at Edgbaston. It was 1-1, and then this one it was building nicely.
At the end of a day's play, for example, on the back of the 6 for 53, what did you do?
You're knackered.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, the only way I describe it is, do you know when you get dragged on the shops by your missus at Christmas time, and you get on, your legs are aching a bit. That's how your legs are every day. And you're obviously aching all over. As a fast bowler, you never play in without a niggle. You've always got some kind of niggle, and you're just trying to deal with it. Honestly, massive sense of what I'd achieved to get 60 against that lot. But at the same time, then you're just thinking, I can just go home, go back to the hotel now, have a good rest, maybe go for some food before you do that, have 1 or 2 beers, and then get into bed.
I said, do you, because it's like you don't. A couple of beers, is it everything's regimented? Because I think everything's regimented then. Back in those days, could it a little bit more relaxed and you could just have your own time and everything? Because every sport now is so professional. Everyone, they know what they're doing for 10 months of the year.
Oh, well, from where I started, I turned pro in 95, 96. I think I was 15 or 16. And then when I finished in 2013, the game had changed exponentially. It was unreal. And I think when I first started, everyone was on the same playing field. They probably have 5-10 pints a night. So when they're playing the next day, they're all on the same wavelength, aren't they? Yeah. Whereas now they obviously avoid drinking. They're all crossed when they're playing. During that time, we could have a quiet couple. We were given that kind of leeway. But they knew, look, you're playing in the biggest series of your life. If you're going to risk going out and getting absolutely hammered, you're going to get found out the next day because those boys will have you.
But the good management, people are different, aren't they? So, some boys, because they're staying in a hotel, might need just 1 or 2 cup of beers, to have a kick, have a good night's sleep. And then other players, will not touch it and go to bed early. People will be kind of watch what they eat and everything. So, I think people don't realise. People say, "Oh yeah, you're in a hotel. You know, you're going here and everywhere." But travelling and hotels, I think, is the worst thing about professional sport. Yes, it's just mind-numbing, isn't it, most of the time? And as I said, cricket is worse, so it's vitally important. And that's what came over, you know, in that series. When you look at all the characters, you know, it looked as if you were having a good time in a pressurous situation, obviously, because, you know, the Australians are a massive scalp, and the Ashes, one of the, you know, the biggest sporting moments of any sport. So, you know, it's a fine balance of discipline and kind of keeping everyone happy, isn't it?
Time to turn to football. Carlton Palmer was voted Player of the Season by the fans of just on every football club he played for, testament to his personality, his desire and his ability. His passion for clubs and country was very evident when he joined us from his home in Shanghai. And the conversation turned to a much discussed substitution as England faced a Euro 92 group stage exit. Manager Graham Taylor decided to take off Gary Lineker. It created headlines for sure.
Alan Smith is called for by England. And Gary Lineker is coming off. This is a sensation. Is Lineker leaving international football? He's obviously stunned by the decision.
Tell me about that moment and what went through all your minds, because Gary being substituted at that moment, that drew a gasp. Right decision, wrong decision. What were you thinking? And was there a big grab afterwards?
I believe that Graham made the decision because he thought it was the right decision. It was nothing personal to do with Gary. He made the decision, let me tell you, and you can watch the game over and tell me if you think I'm right or wrong. Holland v England in Rotterdam to qualify the World Cup, we should have been ahead in the game in the first half. I'm walking down the tunnel, he pulls me, because I played on the right-hand side, that side. That side was quiet. We had no problem with the De Boer brothers that night, right? And he turned around to me and he said, Carlton, we only needed a draw. He said to me, I think we can win the game. I'm going to put Andy Sinton on. Now, it's a decision he chose to make. I think it was wrong. He opened the game up, and once the game opened up, the one player he needed on the pitch was somebody who could get around the pitch, and that was me, and they didn't have it. Okay, Koolman should have got sent off, and we should still have got the result to get us through. So I think he made a decision. If he actually thought about it in hindsight, he would have probably thought about it. It's Gary's last game. You know, let him finish this out. Gary can score. Gary can be having a poor game. I played with Gary lots of times for England. He can be having a poor game, and if there's a chance comes, he'll take it. But I genuinely believe that Graham did what he did because he thought he could still win the football game. I honestly believe that. He's not that type of a bloke. So I think there was a bit of an issue between Graham and Gary about that. But, you know, that's what happens when you're a manager. You have to make those decisions and you live and die by them.
And then the World Cup campaign, which you mentioned before, you mentioned there the sort of thin line between success and failure. I know you. If you would have gone to a World Cup campaign, I think that would have topped it for you. I think that would have been absolutely the pinnacle of your career.
Well, that's all I needed to do, right? To be honest with you, that's all I needed to do. I played in the FA Cup final, played in a League Cup final. I just needed to get to a World Cup. And that campaign, Ray, I've gone over it time and time again. And let me tell you, if somebody doesn't tell us it's against us, what was happening, I'll tell you from the start of the campaign. They were going to do renovations at Wembley. So the talk was, we've got to play the first 2 games at home and then the final 2 games away from home. That's a problem in its start. So we played Norway at home at Wembley, right? We weren't the better side, didn't deserve to lose. In extra time, the guy scores, if you remember, from about 35 yards, a screamer straight in the top corner. We then play Holland at Wembley. In the first half, it's probably the best performance of an England team that I've ever played in. We absolutely battered them. Should have been 3 or 4 up. Bergkamp scores an absolute wonder goal just before half-time. But then after half-time, Les Ferdinand gets brought down, should have been a penalty. Wouters elbows Gascoigne, breaks his cheekbone, and Des pulls Overmars back outside the box. We end up drawing 2-2. And that's the way the campaign went. We just got a break along the way, never got a break. And then you go to, I remember Graham talking to us before we went to Holland, and he said, we only needed a draw. And we all believed we would get it. I mean, you look at the circumstances in that game. The free kick that Koeman scores from should never have been retaken, but then was retaken before the whistle was blown, so David Seaman wasn't set.
Koeman with the free kick for Holland. A vital moment as two sides look for a place in the World Cup finals. The first goal could be so vital. Is that wall lined up? Can Seaman get a side of it? Koeman with a shot, charged down by Ince. Bergkamp tries to get it in. I think possibly Ince will get a yellow card because he was not within, he got within 10 yards, so Koeman gets a reprieve for the second time and gets another free kick. Ron?
As a manager, you think that's brilliant defending from Ince. Ince is the charger. Ince has come out and blocked the shot out, full of bravery. Now he's been punished for it.
So come on, England, let's see if we can hold it out again. Again, it's Ronald Koeman. Again, the problem is there. Again, it's a critical moment. He's going to flick one now. He's going to flick one. He's going to flick one, and it's in!
We get a free kick at the other end, right? Ince, we weren't allowed to retake the free kick. Tony Dorigo hits the post. Paul Merson hits the post. We should have won the game. Koeman should have got sent off. End of story. If it's not a penalty, he's the last man. He gets sent off. He gets sent off. 1-1. We're going to the World Cup. End of story. But that's the campaign. So that's why I believe in life. I've always believed that if things are meant to be, they're meant to be. So it is what it was, and we move on from there.
Still to come, Piers on the pundits. Piers Morgan talks about the sports pundits he thinks hit the mark. But time now to turn to the man that led the way in British tennis for many years. Tim Henman climbed to number 4 in the world rankings. He played in Wimbledon semi-finals. He won titles on the circuit and an Olympic silver medal. To this day, he remains highly influential in the game. Tim's a respected broadcaster, an influential figure behind the scenes at Wimbledon. And that's a tournament that has played such a big part in his life. I'm just keen to hear if you can describe emotionally what and why Wimbledon is so good.
Well, you know, on a global scale, when you talk about the pinnacle of the sport, the players are Wimbledon's greatest spokespeople, both men and women. And if you speak to the top 100 male players, the top 100 female players, in my opinion, you'd get 95% of both saying if they could win one tournament, it would be Wimbledon. And I think that goes back to the history, tradition of the tournament, the way the players are always put at the forefront of decisions, the predominantly white clothing, the green grass, how immaculate it all is. I think that's why it's been so successful. I touched on my history with the event, going there for the first time as a 6-year-old, and you know, making that one and only career decision to say one day, you know, that's where I want to be. So fast forward 15 years, when I got my first opportunity to play on centre court, I think some people would be saying, oh, you know, you're going to be so nervous today. Whereas my reaction was, I've spent 15 years preparing for this, so, you know, let me at it. And to walk out onto that court, the one difference is at Wimbledon, when you play on centre court and court 1, they're the only 2 courts you can't practice on pretty much in the whole of the tennis world. Whereas at Roland Garros, at Australian Open, at the US Open, if you're going to play on that court later in the day, you can go out there and practice that morning. Whereas, you know, when you step out on centre court for the first time, it is the first time you're out there. But for me, I felt comfortable because I've been preparing for it, and I was playing Yevgeny Kafelnikov, who was the French Open champion, seeded 3 or 4, and I think that was a very important first match because I won 7-5 in the fifth, and I saved a couple of match points, and I always, from that moment on, felt so comfortable out there.
An amazing rally, full of absolutely jewels of shots.
How much tennis do you play today? Because I read that you played on the Champions Tour. To my knowledge, Jiffy doesn't play much rugby nowadays for obvious reasons. I'm wondering how much tennis you play.
Well, I think the honest answer to your question is I played in January. That was in Australia when I was the captain of the ATP Cup, which was a new event, great fun, and was there sort of leading the British team. The next time I played tennis was in August, and I was lucky enough to play with my mum and dad at Wimbledon on centre court, because on the back of the championships being cancelled, the courts were all, there at the club looking immaculate, but didn't really have anyone to play on. So the chairman made the decision this year to open it up to the members for centre court and court one. So beginning of August was the last time I played. And yeah, it was a pretty special day to play with my mum and my dad on centre and court one. I think I should just clarify the story by saying that my mum and I took down my dad and a lovely lady called Lorraine Gracie. It was 1 set all. We played a champions tie break, and my mum and dad won it. My mum and I won it 9-7. Another victory.
Fantastic. Centre court at Wimbledon. We can't compare with that, Jiff, can we? Even if we could pick up a tennis racket. Time to hear from the sport promoter who transformed darts, and that came on the back of doing exactly the same with snooker. Add on his experiences in promoting world title boxing contests, owning a football club, and much, much more. Barry Hearn joined us, and the subject turned to the possibility of COVID-19 tests for fans arriving for Anthony Joshua's upcoming contest.
On that test, Barry, the 10-minute test, because I've done an empty Wembley for the Rugby League Cup final. I'm doing Wales, Scotland on Saturday in an empty stadium. So, there's people in there. I got to fill a couple of forms out just to say that I haven't been in touch with anyone. But when I turn up on the day, I just have my temperature taken, and then I've got to stick to these kind of zones. So what's the 10? Because I'm sure if it's £10, whether it's the business that pays for it, or I'm looking at if people can go to the game, if people can go to the game and pay £10 extra, I think people are so fed up with being clammed up, they would do it. So what's that 10-minute test entail?
Well, the idea is it's a swab test. It's a saliva-based swab test. Okay. Basically, you stick it up, you put the test in a little jar, and within 10 minutes, depending on what colour it goes, tells you whether you're positive or negative. Couldn't be easier.
Yeah,
logistically, if you're trying to get 50,000 people into a stadium, it's a problem. But if I'm trying to get, let's say I'm trying to get 1,000 people into a snooker match or a darts match, I can cope with that. I'm trying to think, could I get it right for AJ's fight on December the 12th at the O2? Could I get 4,000 or 5,000? How many? And you look at the logistics, which is the secret of success in the sports business. Logistically, can we cope with how many testing stations will we need? How many people could we do per minute? And a punter, actually, if he's desperate to go and watch a sports event, you don't mind standing around for 10 minutes.
No.
And then you literally get the call out, don't you? Number 17, bugger off. You're positive.
Barry, how would you describe the crucible atmosphere?
Well, to my mind, the crucible atmosphere is like reading a proper Agatha Christie novel. It builds. It builds and builds and builds, and you don't know until you get to the last chapter, last page, last paragraph. You don't know how the uncertainty is there, so you don't say, I've seen this before. It creates unique moments. One of the reasons why I had an offer to take the World Championships, as you know, to China, could have made millions and millions of pounds out of it. Even my son Eddie said, "Dad, you're playing this so well, they're going to pay you a fortune." I said, "Son, we're not going." He went, "No, I understand what you're doing. You're just building a price, aren't you?" I went, "No, boy, we're not going." And he's like, "Dad, that's completely out of keeping with your whole life." And I said, "There are certain things you don't mess about with. One of them is history." And that, I said, on my tombstone, I mean, I know Spike Milligan said, "I told you I was ill," on his tombstone, which I love. On my tombstone, we'll never say, "This is the bloke that took snooker out of the crucible," because it's one of the most unique atmospheres. You've been around sport all your life, Ray, same as all of us. There's certain things you'll never forget. You'll remember your career. You'll go to sleep some nights and you'll think, "Do you know, I was on fire that day." I have all the bad ones erased by therapy, but on the good bits, when you play around the golf, you never remember a bad shot. You only remember the good shot.
Exeter Chiefs Rugby Union Club are the dominant force in the game at present, and having retained their Premiership title just after being crowned European champions, two central figures from the team joined us. They're not only teammates, they're brothers. We spoke to Sam and Joe Simmonds as they reflected on what had been another magnificent campaign for the Devon club. And the conversation turned to a recent phone call from Eddie Jones, just after they had both missed out on being picked from the latest England squad. I'm really keen to ask you about just the fact that he bothered to phone and what impact that had on you.
We were actually on our end of season social when he rung, so it wasn't a great time to be phoning.
Yeah, just don't answer him. Don't answer him. I bet he doesn't come up as Eddie Jones as well. You come up with some comic name, I suppose.
No, it was. It was pretty early though, so we weren't too bad. But, yeah, it was the first time I'd never spoke to Eddie before that. So he actually just left me a text to say, "Give me a call." And if I'm honest with you, it was quite a positive call, to be honest. There was nothing negative about it. He said that he was happy with the way I'm playing, but I just wasn't in the squad. It was quite a short call, to be honest with you. He just said, "Keep working hard." But like, it's everyone's dream, I think, to play international rugby. I say it a lot. My focus is to play well at Exeter, and if I'm playing well at Exeter and I get the recognition to play international rugby, it'll be great. But yeah, the phone call was just short and sharp, really. Just, he's happy with how I'm playing, but just keep improving.
Guys, I know you're ultra professional. You have your job to do, but Jiffy will tell you I'm quite an emotional type. So, but are there still moments that you look over and see each other and think, "I'm doing this with my brother. Surely that must be extra special." And in moments of celebration or moments when you're under the cosh a little bit, do you ever still look over to each other and have a glance?
I think we do. Like, it's more, we speak to our family a lot, and it's usually after games we reflect on it. But for me, it's probably before the games. We always have a little talk, don't we, before games. In games, it's a bit different. But I would say definitely before games, we definitely realise it more. And for me, I think it's when we walk out. The emotions there. That's before you play in these big games. That's when you have a minute to yourself, and to be able to walk out behind Joe as captain, and me being the older brother is something very special. And obviously with how things have been going with things before the game, when you're out there, when you stand in line, give a clap and stuff like that, you stand together and you then see photos after the game. It's just these occasions that some people that play in rugby for 20 years don't get, and we're witnessing them as 25 and 23-year-old and Joe being captain. It's just I think our parents, that sometimes they can't speak how proud they are.
Time to hear from broadcaster, journalist, author, Arsenal fan, Piers Morgan, who joined us just as his latest book, Wake Up, was being published. And it was interesting to hear his take on other TV performers. This was Piers on the pundits. Piers, you don't hold back on television. Who are the football pundits that you think hit the right notes?
I'm a good friend of Gary Lineker. I always say, Gary, you can't actually beat an opinion from someone who's played at the absolute highest level. You know, when I listen to Jonathan about rugby, I listen because I know he's been one of the greats of the game. When I listen to Ian Botham about cricket or Jeff Boycott or people like that, I listen. And I think there's a real pedigree that comes from that. So when Gary Lineker talks, I listen to him. But I like a lot of them. I think that I like people like Roy Keane. To me, he's my dream. He's like the Boycott of football punditry. And I know he divides opinion, but I find him utterly compelling, Roy Keane. You know, I like Gary Neville, Dower Nev. I called him Teabag from Prison Break because he bears an astonishing physical resemblance to him. But I like listening to him moaning away. I love Ian Wright, the passion, the joy, the zest for life. In a way, the way they all do their punditry is very similar to how they played the game. Roy Keane will scythe you down, call you an idiot. You know, Neville constantly chirping and moaning, getting busy with everybody. And Ian Wright leaping around. And joyous, you know, Rio Ferdinand, skillful, elegant, you know, in a way, I don't know what you think, Ray, because you're the expert on this, but I do see people's on-field personalities come through in the way that they do punditry.
And I think what they want to do is, I think it's the honesty.
Sorry,
go on, Ray.
They broadcast as they played, as you say.
Yeah, I really think that. And I think that it applies to probably in every sport. I don't know about rugby so much, but certainly in cricket, for example, you know, you have the sort of calm, analytical style of someone like Mike Atherton. And then you've got Beefy off the long run or Boycott, you know, would take people down. Michael Holding, silky smooth, but not afraid to say what he thinks. You know, it's a very interesting thing to watch as a fan. But you can't get away from the power. The dream really is where you have someone who you know was world class who can also articulate themselves in a really smart and passionate way. That to me, as a fan watching on television, that's the dream because then they've got the authority and they have the passion.
I think what they have is, you know, they have an honesty. You know, they have the respect of the general public, and you know they've been and done it. But the honesty that they, you know, on their comments, I think you have to have credibility. And you have to be, irrespective of how uncomfortable you are, commentating on your own team, your own country, sometimes your own friends. If you lose that credibility, you're gone. So the Brett Lee bowling incident, right? I loved that, right? And I kind of applauded you for saying, right, I'm going to do it, right? I thought you were mad, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right? That's the first thing. Right? I thought, you said, oh, he's going to do it. He's not going to step down. He's not going to step down. What was it like just before the first ball, then after the first ball when it whizzed past your head?
Well, what people didn't see was I thought there'd be like 100 people watching, and then they announced it all on television. So we were at the MCG, and 100,000 people were there that day, or 95,000, and 10,000 came out. It was like being at the Coliseum as a gladiator. And I was practicing in one net, and Brett was bowling in the other, and he was bowling like reasonably quick. And I had a guy giving me throwdowns who then threw down one that pinged me on the head. And I came up like an egg. So I was already incapacitated. Then the Aussie test team came into the nets, Mitchell Johnson in particular. And Brett Lee went over and hugged him. And now the crowd were getting really chanting, "Kill him, Binger, kill him, Binger," Brett's nickname. And then I saw him beginning to get quicker and quicker. So then we start. And I've got bloody padding like the Michelin Man. I've got it all worked out. But the fatal error I made was I'd had dinner with Viv Richards the night before, the greatest batsman I ever watched. Yeah. And Viv said to me, "Man, you got to take it to him, man. Take it back to him. Get down the track. First ball, man, get down the track." So if you watch the first ball, you see me advancing at high speed towards Brett Lee, who later described it. He said, "Sorry, mate." He said, "But I saw you moving, and it's like when a shark sees blood moving in the water. I just had to spear you." So the first one was just a ball of lightning. I never saw it, and I played reasonably good standard East Sussex League Division 1 club cricket for 20 odd years. I used to bat number 3. I faced quick bowling, but nothing like this. Brett Lee's been timed at 100 miles an hour. He's one of the 3 fastest recorded bowlers in history, and he was still playing in the Big Bash at the time, so he was still bowling unbelievably quick. And the first one smashed me in the back. And he came down and he was just laughing. And I went, I'm with a psychopath. This is the kind of guy I could do one of my crime documentaries. And we had these headsets with the sound on. And then the second one, you see me basically diving for cover, as it's ricocheting towards my head. The third one broke my rib, clean fracture. And the fourth one hit the broken rib. And that was the one that really made me wince. And Brett Lee came down and he went, oh, mate, did you hear that one crack? And then I saw Shane Warne have a word with him as if to say, mate, give him, for God's sake, give him something to hit. So he then yorked me, smashed my stumps out of the ground. And then the sixth one, he hit me one more time just for good measure. And a friend of mine, Kevin Peterson, was in the England dressing room. He said they were all, apart from him, well, I don't even believe he wasn't, they were all cheering on Brett Lee. Because, of course, I'd been calling out the England batsmen for being chicken. And the one thing I would say, I never saw any of them. It was unbelievably painful. I had 4 injuries at the end of it and had to get my rib thing. But when I went back in the MCG, the Brits were all like, what a wanker, you've embarrassed us, blah, 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 blah. All the Aussies stood up and went, alas, a pond with some bloody guts around here. And I didn't have to buy a beer in Melbourne or Sydney for the next 2 weeks. It was one of the great trips in my life, even if I could barely sleep from the pain.
With Jiffy having a wealth of experience as a rugby commentator, we decided to explore more about the art of sports commentary. Jonathan Pearce brought just on 40 years of experience to a podcast that turned to the subject of memorable stadiums and commentaries from down the years.
My favourite ground that I've commentated in would be in Turin in 1990, the World Cup semi-final, England against West Germany. Bobby Moore was in the co-commentary position with me. It was a wonderful game of football, unbelievable atmosphere. And because of the meaning of it, because Bobby was alongside me, when England lost, Bobby was in tears, I was in tears, and I realised what England meant to Bobby that day. So that would be my favourite ground I've ever commented on for that one moment, I think. And for atmosphere, and you'll see it hopefully in Euro 2020 played next summer, a full Wembley for an England-Scotland game. It's something. Do you know, I've never been to Wales for a Rugby Union International. I'd love to go. And I'd imagine it's like that. It is absolutely tribal. It's fantastic. That atmosphere of England, Scotland at Wembley is just like nothing else.
JP, the research that you guys do, commentators as a breed, well, you are a breed. I wonder what the collective noun is for football commentators, by the way. But the research you do is absolutely remarkable. I am in awe of the amount of background research you do. It's never ending, JP.
It isn't. I mean, I've got there's research here for the games at the weekend, but because I do work for other companies outside the BBC who do Champions League, Europa League for the World feed that goes out to the English-speaking world, and also for BT, you get to a sequence of games. For example, coming up now, I'll do Saturday match of the day, Sunday a French game, Tuesday Champions League, Wednesday Champions League, Thursday Europa League, Friday French, Saturday BBC, Sunday I'm doing a women's game I think in the day, and then a BT game and a French game, and then we're through to another Champions League week. So you've got to try and get ahead. You've got to try and get, otherwise it's impossible. You've got to try and get like 7 or 8 days ahead, otherwise you just fall into the soupy marsh of statistics.
Are you travelling now, John? Or are you doing some in the match, some live, and then some off tube?
Say again?
Are you doing like some games live and then some games off tube?
The games for the world feed we do off tube, and then they go around the world. That's all live.
Yeah.
And BT is at the moment, a lot of it's off tube. BBC's always at the ground, always live and at the ground. And one of the great mysteries, Stubbsy will tell you this, one of the great mysteries of, actually, when I do look like George Clooney, don't I, when I take the glasses off, right? Hang on.
I was thinking about Jimmy Tarbuck, to be honest.
When you one of the big things people say to you about Match of the Day is you only do 5 minutes of work a week, don't you?
Oh yeah, that's lovely.
You say what? Well, where do you go to edit the Match of the Day? Put the voice on the pictures. Do you go to Manchester to do that? And it takes you about 5 minutes. And you say to them, no, we're at the ground. You do the whole 90 minutes, and you've got all the homework beforehand. And it might make a 10-minute edit, or it might make a 3-minute edit. You have no choice over that. But you still did the same research. And a couple of times I thought, well, I'll cut it back. I will cut down on it. And then you go to a ground, you feel totally naked. If you the whole thing about these piled reams and reams and reams of sheets of research, look, you hope
it is.
You don't use any of it.
The King of Bling, Bobby Dazzler, both are names that are used to introduce one of the greatest figures in darts. Forget the term Godfather, this man is the Dart Father. Bobby George can play the game. He won the News the World title. That was the forerunner of the World Championship. He is a respected broadcaster, and it was Bobby that initiated the element of show business into darts. So how did that come about?
Well, in 1980, I used to play for the King George V. And I was talking to the governor in there when I was going to go in the embassy. And he said, why don't you wear a real, like, glittery shirt or something like the guy who in Spain did? Because we come back from Spain and he got the idea, give it to me. This guy used to dress up. He had a yellow cat suit on with all sequins over it. And he used to do Elvis. Couldn't do Elvis very good. But the women said he's useless, that bloke. They said, but he looks the part. So the governor said, well, you look the part. I said, all right, I'll wear a sequin shirt. He said, I'll bet you 25 quid you don't. Well, I couldn't resist the 25 quid, to be honest with you, Raymond. So, for the shirt. Now, when I came out of my hotel room, Ollie Croft's room was opposite. Ollie Croft was the runner of the BDO then, and he said to me, oh, no, Bob, you're not wearing that on the stage, right? He said, don't you think you got enough pressure on you? I said, well, they won't forget me, will they? Because if I play bad, they say, do you see that idiot all in sequence? Sure. They would never forget me.
Do you look at it now, Bobby, and you think, oh, well, hey, I started that, because you see it all now, you know, and they're all in the crowd and they're all chanting, all singing, they're all in fancy dress. You know, you have a wry smile on your face and go, well, hey, I was the catalyst of this.
I do, but a lot of people don't know that I actually started it.
Yeah.
I took a lot of stick over it to have it. But now they all do it. And a lot of them that know it, they appreciate me starting it because it's made the way for darts to get more entertaining. And you get all different walk-on music. Some of them, I think, why did you put that on? Terrible. There must have been a funeral or something, you know? But I got two records I use. I use the Queen, We Are the Champions, and then I might have to play, I play someone from the audience and all that, but sometimes I have to play Michael Van Buren, which is a very good player at the Boys, and I come on helped by the Beatles.
Ashton Hewitt is a rugby union winger with great pace. He's rapidly making a name for himself with the Dragons. And it was around the time that he'd written a challenging and well-received article about rugby union's response to racism that Ashton joined us to give us more detail on what had motivated him to speak out.
The thing is, Jeff, is like as a youngster, it was like racism. As a child, I faced certain incidents that would be you, this and that, and name calling, and you know, there's no real understanding behind what they're saying and what they're doing, and that's why education is so important. Because I've had direct racism where it's name calling and this and that, you know, throughout my career, but they're isolated incidents. A lot of it will be the sort of racial banter, which, in all honesty, you know, for many years, depending on the severity, obviously, because some jokes can be more, you know, inappropriate than others, if you like. I was finding that the message was getting confused, especially when I was saying what was appropriate and wasn't appropriate, and it was taking a lot of education and a lot of time to explain why I was letting some things go and other things not go, and letting some things go for certain people and not other people. So it sort of got to a stage where there's obviously different forms of racism, there's different severities of those forms, But if you just, you try and chuck it all out because of the reasoning behind it, it just saves a lot of confusion for both, for everyone involved, really.
Like, talk us through now then the last few months for you, because it's been kind of a disjointed kind of rugby season, finishing, starting. Yeah. What's it all been like, with prep and then off and then, back into playing?
To be fair, the Dragons have dealt with it as best as they possibly could, I think, in terms of staying in touch, communicating, when we were in the thick of lockdown and we couldn't go in. We were still engaging with each other really well. It did get frustrating because we got quite deep into it, didn't we? But then as soon as we were back, everything was clear. And besides, not having your normal meetings and things like that, and being able to have a coffee between sessions and stuff. Prep's been very much, a lot more video stuff has been going out on WhatsApp and things like that for us to look at and do our homework, maybe away from the environment rather than sitting in a room full of computers, because we can't do that. But in terms of prep, I think it's not strayed too far, and we're definitely getting what we need.
And